Traditional domestic work divisions are said to exist because the house is associated with femininity and paid labor with masculinity. Contesting who does what in the home is potentially equal to challenging what it means to be a woman or a man.
This young loggerhead turtle needs to get to work. Turtles can be tethered in these small cloth harnesses and placed in this boring swimming tank. Ken Lohman, a biologist at the University of North Carolina, researches sea turtles that are programmed from birth to embark on an astonishing adventure. The eggs were buried on the sand by the mother turtles, who then went to the water, where they hatched 50 to 60 days later.
The expanding scale of the war convinced Lincoln that any measure to undermine the Confederacy and boost the Union war effort was legitimate as a military necessity, prompting his seemingly abrupt change of heart about his war power to emancipate slaves.
Green tea is brewed and served to a small group of guests in a tranquil atmosphere during a Japanese tea ceremony, which is influenced by Buddhism. The ritual might last up to 4 hours, and both the server and the guest must make numerous ceremonial gestures.
The great European and American orchestras had the advantage of being able to develop their iconic position during a period when their identity could become fixed, there was less competition, and it was easier to build a brand. They not only had the nicest halls, but they also drew the best musicians, who tended to stay in one place.
Tourism is a difficult area to collect statistics on because firms that serve tourists also serve locals. As a result, estimating how much money businesses make and how many jobs are created as a result of visitor spending is difficult.
It seems that science can satisfactorily explain why the universe still exists. It seems that science can satisfactorily explain why the universe still exists. Unfortunately, the two most interesting economic electives clash on my timetable. Unfortunately, the two most interesting economic electives clash on my timetable.
It is of the utmost importance that you follow the ethical guidelines carefully. It is of the utmost importance that you follow the ethical guidelines carefully. A science-based approach is vital for effective advancements. A science-based approach is vital for effective advancements.
We must hand in our assignments by end of the week. We must hand in our assignments by end of the week.
Most of the lectures begin promptly, so do not be late. Most of the lectures begin promptly, so do not be late. Anonymous behaviors, without intervention. Anonymous behaviors, without intervention.
We need to make sure the school principal know about the changes. We need to make sure the school principal know about the changes.
The older equipment has been put at the back of the building. The older equipment has been put at the back of the building.
In my free time, I would like to read books and newspapers. In my free time, I would like to read books and newspapers.
There is position available for assistant lecture. There is position available for assistant lecture.
The popularity of cultural websites in Scotland is depicted in the graph below. None of these, concert websites, and library websites are among the things. These graph shows that the popularity value for historical and heritage is roughly 20%, whereas the popularity value for concert websites is greater at almost 30%. This graph demonstrates that the greatest value, a whopping 55%, is found in none of these. This graph also shows that record websites have the lowest value. In conclusion, there is a wide range in website popularity.
the number of persons is shown in the following graph. Men, women, and both sexes are represented in the objects. The year, which ranges from 1996 to 2002, is the horizontal axis. This graph shows that in 1996, the value for men is approximately 1,500, while the number for women is higher at approximately 1,600. The maximum value for men in this graph is approximately 2,000, which is around 1998. The lowest figure for both sexes on this graph is 3,000, which occurred in 1996. In conclusion, from 1996 to 2002, women were valued higher than men.
The age distribution in the UK from 1911 to 2011 is depicted in the graph below. When we consider those who are 65 years and older, the percentage has climbed from 5% in 1911 to 15% in 2011. Contrarily, the age group under 14 has dropped from 30% to 20% over the same time period. The proportion of people between the ages of 15 and 64 has stayed constant over time, hovering around 70%. In conclusion, it is reasonable to anticipate that from 1911 to 2011, the population of the UK will age.
The percentages of poverty in each age group and gender in 2012 are shown in the graph below. The poverty rate for women in the 65-plus age group is 11%, compared to 6.6% for men in the same age group. The poverty rate for women in the 18 to 64 age range is 15.4%, while it is 11.9% for men. Female poverty rates are 22.3% and male poverty rates are 21.3%, which is significantly higher than other age groups. This graph was created using data from the 2013 Annual Social and Economic Supplement of the Current Population Survey by the U.S. Census Bureau. In summary, this graph provides a wealth of information. The state of Alaska's social problems includes the Native Alaskans' poor mental and emotional health. It is regrettable that many Native Americans experience substandard living situations across the nation. Native Alaskans frequently have a lack of mental and emotional well-being, which includes persistently poor physical and mental health. In some situations, entire villages are affected. They frequently engage in alcohol abuse, domestic violence, homicide, and suicide, which of course causes families to disintegrate. It is heartbreaking to watch how many kids are harmed and receive poor education. In actuality, a growing number of kids are abusing alcohol and other drugs on their own, and the rate is rising. Many children are ignored or taken care of by others since their parents are unable to do it due to their mental problems and alcohol consumption. As a result, we might draw the conclusion that Native Alaskans are losing touch with their communities, cultural identities, and, most crucially, their childhoods. Thus, it is clear how bad the problem is. Additionally, they are reliant on government assistance and subsidies rather than earning a living for themselves. They are no longer in charge of or accountable for their government, economy, or other institutions.
Recently, I've given a lot of thought to how the world has evolved over the past 20, 30, and 40 years. 20 or 30 years ago, if a chicken in a little East Asian village developed a cold, sneezed, and died, it would have been tragic for the chicken and its immediate family, but I doubt there was much chance of us worrying about a pandemic that would kill millions of people. 20 or 30 years ago, if a North American bank made excessive loans to a few borrowers who were unable to repay them and the bank failed, it was awful for both the lender and the borrower, but we had no idea that it would eventually bring down the entire world's financial system. This is globalization. This marvel has made it possible for us to send our bodies, brains, words, pictures, and ideas, as well as teaching and learning materials, around the world at ever-increasing speeds and costs. It brought a lot of nice things as well as a lot of unpleasant things, like what I just mentioned. Many of us are unaware of the amazing achievements of the Millennium Development Goals, some of which have long since surpassed their deadlines. That demonstrates that if mankind as a species works together and tries extremely hard, it is capable of making extraordinary progress.
What is the opposite of artificial? What is the opposite of artificial?
What material are windows made of? What material are windows made of?
What do we call the lenses which people use instead of glasses? What do we call the lenses which people use instead of glasses?
What is the name of ceremony in which two people get married?
What is the name of ceremony in which two people get married?
What type of food is an apple? What type of food is an apple?
In my view, it's impossible not to talk about wildlife, and not think about its role in livelihood. And I guess part of that is my own view, part of the research that I do in Africa. In most eastern West Africa, I look at the role. All the humans rely on wildlife as the source of food, and also the source of income. And we talk about our wildlife, if we're talking about fish, we are talking about what is probably the single most important source of protein for a human net across the globe. And, so, billions of, or more than 1 billion of people rely on fish as their primary source of animal protein, and most of these people living in poverty. So the management of fish resource of wildlife in that sense causing incredibly important to livelihoods and health. And also, wildlife tourism is the multiple billion-dollar industry, and in many places, such as Africa, South America, it can be the #1 source of income. It can be the #1 source of foreign income for economies.
You need good ideas to be a successful entrepreneur, but the definition of a good idea differs depending on who you ask. An excellent concept should have a number of characteristics. First and foremost, a great idea should be unique and diverse. Second, the excellent idea should be one of a kind, which implies no one else has come up with it. Finally, great ideas must be transforming and productive in order to be effective. Although all ideas are really a collection of smaller ideas, this does not exclude them from being unique. Simply copying does not make something distinctive, it is the personality that is infused into a notion that makes it stand out. Constant innovation eliminates stagnation and, as a result, adds to the core concept, effectively making it distinctive. Basic things inspire unique ideas, which are essentially extensions of pre-existing concepts. And an idea or a concept is unique only when it outperforms its predecessor and achieves its goal in a more efficient and accurate manner.
I hate to say it, but probably the best thing that could happen right now is a little consolidation, because one of the reasons that we have so many news sources out there is because up until recently, the local newspaper in everybody's town was the only newspaper they got, pretty much. Well, now, if you're consuming news online, then what's the difference between the local newspaper that I read in Kentucky versus the one that the guy reads in Dallas or the one that somebody reads out in North Dakota. And it turns out that if you did a comparison, and I'm just making this figure up, but I'm going to guess that it's about 90% similar stuff. I mean, when you take out high school football scores, restaurant reviews, and local social gatherings, and you just have regional and national stuff in there, you really can get that stuff from anywhere. And so I think what's happened is a lot of these newspapers and local TV stations don't realize that now they're all in direct competition with not only each other, but the nationals as well.
All right, a little bit of history. Well, the current debate that we're having is a uniquely American phenomenon. Uniquely American because voting machines don't exist in most of the rest of the world, including Western Europe, where one might think we find them. We really only have voting machines, I think about a third or a half of South America uses voting technology. Holland does, because there's a machine manufacturer there. And the whole country of India uses electronic voting machines, which is quite interesting. Those machines are made by the Indian government. But other than that, everyone votes on good old paper ballots.
Dave Hackenberg, a beekeeper since 1962, can usually tell what killed his bees just by looking at them. If they're lying on the ground in front of a hive, it's probably pesticides, he says. If the bees are deformed and wingless, it's probably vampire mites. But last fall, Hackenberg saw something he had never seen before. Thousands of his bee colonies simply disappeared. He was in Florida at the time, pulling the lids off some of his commercial hives. To his horror, they were all empty.
And one particular crop, almond in the US and now in Australia, is transforming the world of beekeeping and of bees. What has happened is that something serendipitous came along, that people found out, that doctors found out that almonds are good for you, a confection, but it's good for you. The almond board got a very aggressive promotion going on for almonds. They actually, I just heard recently, send out sales reps to cardiologists at hospitals to promote the heart benefits of almonds. In a very good promotion of almonds, and it's legitimate promotion because they are a healthy food.
Along the way, we have built unashamedly beautiful buildings, 2 of which have won and been runner-up in the prestigious United Nations World Habitat Award, the first time an Australian building has received that international honor. We rely on older concepts of Australian architecture that are heavily influenced by the bush. All residents have private verandas which allow them to socialize outdoors and also create some defensible space between their bedrooms and public areas. We use a lot of natural or
We all know that journalists often make things sound worse than they are, but they aren't the only ones. It seems that scientists sometimes do it too. In the past, scientists have claimed that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that's the area in the Pacific Ocean where plastic waste has collected together to create one kind of big garbage island. Anyway, they have claimed that this area of garbage is twice the size of the state of Texas, or 20 times the size of England. Some scientists even said that there's more plastic in that ocean than plankton. That's the tiny animals and plants that fish eat. But a new report shows that while there is a very serious problem for the environment, it's not as great as many scientists have said. The research showed that the garbage covers an area that's much smaller than Texas. And while plastic can harm some sea life, it actually feeds other tiny living creatures. For this reason, the report concludes that we shouldn't try to remove the plastic, but should focus on stopping more garbage from entering the ocean, so it doesn't get worse in the future.
It seems as though people are starting to suffer from global warming fatigue. In other words, they're tired of hearing about how our climate's changing for the worse and how we're destroying the planet with pollution. People do care, but there's a lot of talk, little action, and certainly no solution yet. The stories people see in newspapers focus on the negative. They talk about how politicians are choosing the economy over the environment, especially in these difficult economic times, and they write about people whose lives have been negatively affected by extreme climate change. Why should we spend our free time reading articles that make us feel depressed and probably quite helpless? Global warming campaigners must turn the sad stories into happy ones. They should talk about the actions that are having a positive effect on climate change, so that people become interested again and feel motivated to continue taking action.
In 2015 alone, the ethanol industry created and supported more than 350,000 jobs. Ethanol also contributed nearly $44 billion to the U.S. gross domestic product, GDP, a number exceeding the total GDP of many countries. And the production of 14.7 billion gallons of ethanol means that the U.S. needed to import 527 million fewer barrels of crude oil to meet the country's demand for gasoline. New technologies are helping make Earth-friendly American ethanol even more sustainable. Enogen corn enzyme technology, available only from Syngenta, is an in-seed innovation and the industry's only corn designed specifically to enhance ethanol production. By incorporating grain from Enogen corn hybrids into its existing production process, an ethanol plant can reduce the viscosity of its corn mash from a consistency of oatmeal of lemonade, enhancing production efficiency and decreasing costs.
As the high school and college football seasons heat up, the National Operating Committee on Standards for Athletic Equipment, NOCSE, is encouraging parents, coaches and athletes to refresh their knowledge on helmet safety and safe play. Keep these 3 simple steps in mind. 1. Know your helmet. There are no concussion-proof helmets. No football helmet completely prevents all head injuries, including concussions. 2. Maintain your helmet. Helmets should be reconditioned and recertified to the NOCSE standard on a regular basis. Helmets that have been recertified will have a label inside the helmet indicating the name of the recertifying company and the date of recertification. 3. Prioritize safe play. Football helmets are just one part of helping to protect against head injuries. Use proper blocking and tackling and demand enforcement of rules that prohibit players from leading with their helmets to hit other players.
Like many mammals, deer physically prepare for winter by better insulating their bodies. In the fall, deer gradually trade their summer coats for a warmer winter one, which is more substantial and has thicker, longer, darker hair called guard hairs, to protect their fur and skin from rain and snow. Their winter coat naturally absorbs more sunlight and traps more body heat than their warm weather coat, which provides an exceptional amount of protection from the _________.
Many of today's travelers seek a sense of community and connection at their destinations. Travelers seeking a Caribbean gateway with a welcoming feel and local flavor need look no further than the Bay Garden Resorts on the beautiful island of St. Lucia. The Bay Gardens Resorts properties are ideally situated to take advantage of the best restaurants, activities, and events that the community of St. Lucia has to underscore.
I believe our borders should be open. But if that is not politically acceptable for now, Europe should at least open up a legal route for people from developing countries to come work here. Over time, hopefully, we can move to a position where borders are completely open. Persuading skeptics won't be easy. That's why I think the argument for free migration has to be made at several levels. A principled case, it increases freedom and reduces injustice. A humanitarian case, it helps people much poorer than ourselves. An economic case, it makes us richer. And a pragmatic case, it is inevitable, so it is in everyone's interests to make the best of it. Freedom of movement is not just a matter of human rights and international solidarity. It is in our self-interest. Opening our borders may seem unrealistic. But so too, once did abolishing slavery or giving women the vote. Campaigning for people's right to move freely is a noble cause for our time. I believe our borders should be open. But if that is not politically acceptable for now, Europe should at least open up a legal route for people from developing countries to come work here. Over time, hopefully, we can move to a position where borders are completely open. Persuading skeptics won't be easy. That's why I think the argument for free migration has to be made at several levels. A principled case, it increases freedom and reduces injustice. A humanitarian case, it helps people much poorer than ourselves. An economic case, it makes us richer. And a pragmatic case, it is inevitable, so it is in everyone's interests to make the best of it. Freedom of movement is not just a matter of human rights and international solidarity. It is in our self-interest. Opening our borders may seem unrealistic. But so too, once did abolishing slavery or giving women the vote. Campaigning for people's right to move freely is a noble cause for our time.
In our survey, over 100 CEOs who had recently been through an acquisition or merger were asked which areas of their activities needed the most effort. As you can see, the most frequent responses to this question was that information technology requires the most effort. According to 58% of those we surveyed, IT was the most time-consuming and needed the most work. This is understandable as many of the IT issues are extremely complex and the consequences of any change in IT can have a significant impact. The key is how quickly and effectively IT integration can be achieved. And there has to be a clear understanding of the consequences there may be of not getting it right. The two areas requiring significant sales, marketing, and business development on the one hand, and the financial management on the other both were selected by 49% of the respondents. In our survey, over 100 CEOs who had recently been through an acquisition or merger were asked which areas of their activities needed the most effort. As you can see, the most frequent responses to this question was that information technology requires the most effort. According to 58% of those we surveyed, IT was the most time-consuming and needed the most work. This is understandable as many of the IT issues are extremely complex and the consequences of any change in IT can have a significant impact. The key is how quickly and effectively IT integration can be achieved. And there has to be a clear understanding of the consequences there may be of not getting it right. The two areas requiring significant sales, marketing, and business development on the one hand, and the financial management on the other both were selected by 49% of the respondents.
Continuing students will be sent necessary application forms. Continuing students will be sent necessary application forms.
You should submit your team papers to the general office. You should submit your team papers to the general office.
Studies show there is a positive correlation between two variables. Studies show there is a positive correlation between two variables.
Scientists were unsure when the early man first left Africa. Scientists were unsure when the early man first left Africa.
If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and also press below bell icon. Thank you.